So I think that to summarize what Vidmanta said, I would have to probably emphasize the very final thought on let's not procrastinate, but let's innovate. And I have also marked the 800 billion euros to be invested additionally to catch up with the US. And the Draghi's report was mentioned as well, which does get mentioned a lot of times these days, just to show us that Europe is lagging behind in many ways in terms of the growth of economy. And maybe as an initial question, I would like to get your takes on this call that Vidmantas has produced. Let's innovate. I mean, we have been talking about this forever. Why aren't we still innovating? So what is your take on this call? And maybe, Christina, I could start with you. Maria Lisa was saying in her introductory word that Lithuania is doing well, forming consortiums, all the stakeholders, policymakers, higher education together to think about the direction the AgriFood, for example, is going. How are we actually doing? Let's start with Lithuania. How is Lithuania doing in terms of driving this industrial innovation? Are we innovating enough?
Well, it is a hard question, first of all. Very recently, I've heard in many conversations people arguing what is actually innovation. So probably Maria-Lisa can also comment on that, but what do we actually consider innovation? For example, I always say that in agri-food, we need to remember that not only totally new or something out of the blue produced, something new which has never existed is an innovation. We really need to think about the ways agri-food sector is overall working and then innovate the process itself or see the new ways that we can improve the process or improve the productivity or improve overall goals that we are trying to reach. Because with the new agenda being set up already quite some years ago with the twin transition, Green Deal and digitalization, we already can see some challenges and we can already see new lessons that need to be addressed very quickly. Not everything is working from the paper. So probably this is the main message that Lithuania, I think, is overall doing quite well because we have many progressive farmers, we have many progressive food producers, we have overall quite keen consumers to accept those innovations. But looking at the broad scale, still as a whole EU, of course, each member state has its own vision. And when we're seeing the one view, this is very important how we're going to be proceeding or how we're going to be solving those challenges. So about the innovation, I think innovation starts from us in the head, what we consider as innovation and how we're going to be moving towards it. Because not all the foundation being set up or all the goals being set up, we already see not all will be implemented that well. So we need to first of all see what really works, and if something is not working, how can we adjust to that?
Thank you so much. To first see if it works, does that apply to the whole region, Maria Lisa?
Yeah, well, maybe just a word on Christina's thinking there that, yeah, indeed, like what do we talk about when we talk about innovation? I mean, we know that there's incremental innovation, which is more like kind of like improvements, and then there's like disruptive. And it doesn't matter indeed what type of innovation, except it does matter when there are things that, are very much related to competitivity. So there, indeed, we can see that we can become more competitive through better processes, indeed. But then also what we need to see is that what are we going to do in the future? And that's often where the disruptive innovation has to come to play. And that's also like, it's the same for agri-food sector. It means that there's a lot of things that maybe we can consider that it is very low tech, but actually it is not. It is becoming more and more high tech at the same time. And then at the same time, we need to see that, okay, as I said earlier, how the food is going to be produced and consumed in the future. And these are really very important questions as well in terms of towards what type of innovations we also need to go. Do we need to, what can we do as Europeans? What we can do in this region now as a whole Europe, where we actually have all these capabilities. I mean, from the higher education field, great innovations are, and studies and science is producing actually things that can be turned into very fantastic innovation. But we need also the courage to change certain number of things, and we need to also question before we are actually able to go towards the new innovation. And it's very important. There's also one thing as well, when things are going really well, we can be very satisfied of ourselves. And this is often the biggest barrier towards great innovation. So we need to question, like, repeatedly also what we are doing, how we are doing, and what is the direction that we want to go. Then it is also obviously the policymakers to make sure that they follow that this it's possible to innovate, because if there are barriers that are not allowing these things to actually go further, it doesn't matter how much money even we are pouring into it, because there's going to be a barrier that is not allowing innovation actually to take place. So, but these things has to go hand in hand. We are not in isolation, not as a sector, but not as in Europe as a whole and in the world as a whole. So it's really, really important to understand that, and we cannot work in different order and time span. Maybe this is what I want to say, and this applies to all the regions, everywhere. Whether it is, in Lithuania, whether it is in Nordics, which I also know obviously rather well, but equally, the western part of Europe. So the same things apply. They might have a little bit different meanings, but they apply.
So obviously what I can hear, what you're saying and what Christina has said and what Vidmantas has said as well, is that, again, that we are not really innovating fast enough.
No.
We still have to innovate faster. We have to be more courageous, as you say. And I want to ask probably Mr. Vaściaga from the European Commission, do we have any good news? Do we have any good signs that we are actually improving? What examples could we set out as the ones leading the strategic pathway for resilient and competitive agri-food ecosystems in the regions? Are we happy with the strategic dialogue on the future of EU agriculture, for example?
Very good question, and thank you very much. Happy to be here and to speak to you all. We are now, 26th of November, and in a few days, a new European Commission, the new term of the European Commission will start. And we're going to be having a new commission also for agriculture. Also in Lithuania, there is a certain change, so we are in the middle of political cycles, and I think it's a good moment to reflect and to see what was working well and what was working perhaps less well in the sector.
So what was working well? Is there anything that is driving change more than anything else?
I think it's what is a good thing is that we are secure with the food supply. I think when we are looking at how the world is constructed now, at the geopolitical tensions which we are having, we always have to think about the security. Also from the Draghi report perspective, when we have been speaking about innovation, you have to, about competitiveness, you have to think first of all about security. So in agriculture, you also have to speak about and think about security. So security of the food supply, and this is working. It is working, but we always have to keep it in mind. When we speak about innovation, we also have to keep that in mind. So that's the first S. You know, in total there are 4 S's if you want. So first is the security. Second is the stability. You have to have a certain stability in the sector, which allows the farmers, which at the end are producers of the agri-food and of agricultural products, you have to provide them with the security. You have to think about innovation, but they also need to have the stability of income. You know, now we will be having the next negotiations for the income support, the multi-annual financial framework, and so on. You have to see sustainability, and this is where we are maybe still need things to do in the agricultural sector. But I see that perhaps my colleague from the European Commission will also be commenting more on that one. And we also need to look at the 4th S. I'm using the 4 S's, is the solidarity. Because you also have to see the solidarity across the value chains. You need to see, you know, how much bureaucracy is there in the agriculture, and this is what is also working less, and there will be a lot of emphasis in the next commission. So that's the way I see it now at the juncture of these 2 political cycles.
What will change with the new commission, do you think?
So first of all, now at the end of the previous commission, there was the strategic dialogue which was started. You know, when you have huge protests happening across Europe, and when you're hearing farmers who are coming to those protests, you realize that you have to listen to certain things. There are certain things which are not working. So I think what's going to be the first thing for the new European Commission in the first 100 days, there will be the new blueprint for our future of the agricultural policy. And it will come from the strategic dialogue that I mentioned, the strategic dialogue that has been taking place in the last 9 months, encompassing various actors in the value chain. It's a huge work that has been done. It has been represented the farmers, the producers, you know, the distributors, so many participants of the value chain. And the good thing is that the conclusions that I have come up from, you know, they have been agreed by all the participants of the dialogue. So it is a good starting point for the new blueprint. And agriculture is going to be, as I'm saying, among the first 100 days initiatives. There are not that many of those, and they are the most important ones. So one of them is going to be agriculture. And then we will see, you know, the real plan for the next 5 years.
Thank you. And I can see that Christian wants to now comment. You are an EU climate action chef, let's call you that way. The new blueprint for the future of agricultural policy. How hopeful could we be that this will finally speed up the innovation and change that we are working on?
Hi, good morning. Very happy to be with you. Sorry that I couldn't come in person, but as already said, we have a lot of work here, also on this, working on the strategic vision. I think from our side, from climate action, we have this big target in 2050 to make Europe climate neutral. So for this, we need to reduce the emissions, also from agriculture, but we also need to get better to get CO2 directly out of the air. We need to reduce the concentration of CO2 in the air. And there, agriculture, forestry can again play a key role, because you can store carbon in your soils, in your forests, and the product you produce out of it, and then also managing the products more sustainably. So, for example, avoiding food waste. And what we believe very much when doing climate policy, it's about setting the right incentives. So it's not us here in Brussels who do the innovation, who can tell others what to do. We always are very bad in that. But we need to set the right framework conditions. So we need to make a good business case for those farmers and foresters who want to go into a more sustainable farming practice. And what I see is all the solutions are out there, and that's always true with climate policy. If you also look into other sectors, We know how to produce hydrogen. I mean, renewable energy is by now the cheapest source of energy that we have. The challenge are the investments, and the challenge are the scale up and the rollout. So, and there we really want to use the power of the market to roll that out. So how can we reward farmers who produce their food more sustainably, reduce their emissions, really get a reward for every ton of CO2 that they reduce, that they save, or that they store? For example, agroforestry, rewetting of peatlands. There are so many solutions out there that we can do, and that are not only good for climate action, that are good for biodiversity, that are good for resilience. And resilience, I think, is so important when we go towards 2050, because we may also want like more biogenic carbon as a feedstock for our chemical industry, for our textile industry, for our building materials. So the demand on our land will not decrease. So it's about how can we create the right conditions that those who do it more sustainably also get a higher profit. And this is something we are actively working on. We are doing a lot of nerdy stuff currently on how can we better measure, better quantify emission reductions, carbon removals, and then to build a business case on that.
And from your perspective, could we expect any drastic changes with the new commission?
I think drastic changes are not maybe not so much our business here. It's about the evolution that we can do, and I think this is what our incoming president von der Leyen has already laid out. Is that the challenge now is, after we've built up a lot of the frameworks for climate, for environment, for the Green Deal in the previous mandate, it's now about providing the financing in getting the market conditions right.
Thank you so much. And I hear that you're saying that we need to reward farmers, we need more sustainable farming practices. But at the same time, I want to touch upon a slightly different topic. Maria Lisa has spoken about technologies a little bit. And the next BITE event in Rome that we both attended, one of the topics there, one of the main conclusions, I would say, was that basically we just do not have enough arable land or fresh water on the planet, and we are approaching the intersection, and I'm quoting Tony Hunter, of 5 technologies that will guide the future of food: alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, genomics, microbiome, synthetic biology. AI will drive the other 5 technologies, and we'll find questions to answers we didn't even know we had. So my question is, I mean, we have to speak about technologies and food in the agriculture sector as well. And maybe my first initial question is that how is this sector preparing for that? And do you really believe that this is the future, food dependent totally on technologies?
Yes, I think that it is the future. I mean, and now when we talk about technology, it doesn't mean that it is very, technology can be actually in different areas. So let's not make right away a kind of like a picture that is very far-fetched. Nevertheless, at ET Food, we created about 2 years ago protein diversification think tank. We are looking at the whole spectrum of a protein, so from animal protein to cellular agriculture. And what we have been able to do in 18 months, because this is when we started to work also with the policymakers in Brussels, with the different DGs, we had a direct exchange. We are not a lobbying organization. We are actually trying to see that what is happening in the agri-food sector if we are moving one of the parameters, or if there's a one solution. So for example, if you take cell ag, which is of course for some people it's like, well, wow, you know, that's a little bit too too maybe daring, and it's going to change the sector completely. No, it's one element that is going to be changed, but it's not going to change everything. We are still going to obviously also farm the land, but it's also true that in the future we will have to obviously feed more people. We also know that 40% of the land in Europe is in a very poor situation. It's not very good land. So if you don't have a good land, you cannot have good food. This is a given. So that's why, again, it's really important to see that, okay, the future is actually multiple. And we had also in this protein diversification, we organized a roundtable with the farmers. And I have to say that, there's also like a lot of farmers who are very much ready and willing to see that what different ways there are in the future to do the farming. But it will also require thinking what kind of a business models there. It's not only about carbon farming, okay? It is like really the whole scope. And that's really important. There will be different business models. They will be used. There will be a lot of different technologies that will be used. And that's future is there. It is there. And it will be. Now, I cannot picture you either that, okay, how is it going to look like exactly? But it is a composition of these different technologies, for sure.
And is the regulatory framework catching up with the direction we are going, Mr. Vashchega? Is the regulatory framework then catching up? I mean, is the regulatory framework preparing for the fact that, in the future, food, including in the possibly agricultural sector, will depend on technologies, will be produced by technologies?
Well, certainly technology is there, but I mean, there are various angles which we see in agriculture. There are those where we want to have more technology, but there are also those where we want to have less technology, right? So it's you always have to have a good balance of these things. If you are going for the eco schemes, if you're going for the eco farms, then we're speaking about less technology or maybe different type of technology. Yeah, that's maybe the approach. So obviously the things are developing. It's also part of the future in the agriculture. But as I'm saying, when we are concentrating on technology, and that's my message. When we are concentrating so much on technology, let's not forget about other things. Let's not forget about the fact that behind that there are farms, that the number of farms is reducing, that the generations do not change in the farming sufficiently quickly, that the farming as business is becoming older, and that is, by the way, bad for technological and for innovation normally. So these type of things we have to keep in mind, and this is where we also have to think when we are thinking about the future of agriculture.
Thank you. I'm actually really happy because there are many questions coming in from you. Thank you so much for that. And we will take whatever is remaining, 15 or 20 minutes to answer some of those questions. The German finance minister stated that the EU could easily reallocate 100 billion in agricultural budgets as proposed by Draghi within half a day. How do you perceive such a proposal? And maybe I could merge this question with the other one. Considering that there are inefficiencies in the use of agricultural funds, do you think this reallocation could drive meaningful reform in the sector? Whoever would want to comment. Christian, maybe if you could understand the question, and if you heard the question, if you could take a moment to comment, that would be lovely.
Yes, so this will be one of the big upcoming proposals of the new Commission, is our new EU budget, including the common agricultural policy. And I think we want to build on what we've done with the previous budget, is to make it more result-based, more reform-based, so to reward those who take maybe the higher risks, who go to more sustainability. So I think it's like as in many other areas, it's about how do we manage a just transition. So how do we give the right financial incentives to those who want to do new things, who want to invest, who want to take risks. But then, of course, we also need to really take everyone with us and leave no one behind. So it will be about this balancing between ensuring a fair income for everyone, but at the same time, giving new incentives, like maybe more market-oriented, what I said before, so that we spur those innovations. And this is the balance we need to find.
There was a comment about us missing farmers in this discussion, so this is just a disclaimer, and I will just have to say that there will be lots of discussions here on this stage and in 2 other rooms, and the voice of farmers will definitely be heard, so we will not miss farmers, and this is very important to point out. This is a very good question. What grade or mark out of 10 would you give for innovations in agri-food sector in the Baltic states and Nordics compared to the US, for example? And maybe Mr. Janulavicius, you could make a more general comment. We don't necessarily have to speak about agri-food, but if you are willing, agri-food in specific, but also in general, comparing to the US, what grade would you give to our innovations?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's quite big differences between US and European Union in general. The US exports really a lot of raw materials from the food sector. You know, they're doing really supply. And I think way inside European Union with the new regulation of CO2 emissions and so on and decarbonization, I think we need to use more efficiently the investments in technology, especially to produce the products with a bigger value, not just export the raw materials, as we are doing quite well in Lithuania. Nevertheless, our figures really shows quite good results. 23% of total export from 80% of our export, 23 it's from agri-food sector. But I think we still, I'm talking more about Lithuania, that we still have this gap, you know, that we export so many raw materials, but not the final end products with a big added value. I think this is our direction. In these cases, we can reduce the CO2 emission, not just export the grains, millions of tons. It's very nice by the 100,000 people population in Lithuania in top 5 of the world, you know, but I think if it would be nice if you would export some final products with added value. For this, we need technology, we need to have the investments. And it's, as I mentioned just before, we could reduce the CO2 emission. We have the good examples, and I saw just the Andrius Pranskevičius, which come from a Cola group, you know, with the new factory. Congratulations on the new factory last week opened there.
He will be speaking in the next panel.
Yeah, he could tell about the new factory. I think this is a really good example how to create the more big added value with the final end products. And they're catching over 20% of the European single market on some of the direction of the products. I think we need to walk on this direction and invest the funds, which we're discussing with the European Union, especially to commercialize, to increase the value, to automatize, because I see that the people inside this sector, we need to make more attractive this sector for the younger generations. You know, it looks as well that the all young generations wants to be influencers and digital content creators, but not the farmers. Yeah, and we need to say that no, these are not farmers. This is a modern industry. And if we can export cheese to Italy, mozzarella even, or Jugas cheese, you know, to Italy, and they say that this really feels as a true Italians, maybe we can work not only on the dairy products. The same, maybe with the grains, with the different directions, we can do the same. I think with the best equipment, best investment, and I think it will be. It's not final answer to the question.
Yeah.
I want to say
it's never final. I know. Kristina, what would your mark be on the innovation?
Yeah, I really wanted to add, we are talking a lot about the implementing of the technology, but we need to remember that we have many stakeholders, right? So, and each stakeholder brings different opportunities, different expertise. So we're talking about business, then we're talking about the policymakers, right? We have academia, and we need to look, and then we have consumers also. So we need to look for the whole food value chain, and this is very important. For a long time, I've been witnessing that in many discussions we would forget farmers. They come with the business, but also, so farmers, business, academia, policymakers, when we connect all the dots, then we can implement the innovation. Otherwise, it won't work the way we want.
So from 1 to 10, how good our innovations in the agri-food sector are if we compare it to the US?
To the US, okay. If we're looking to the US, I
Give
would
me
agree
the
with
figure.
yeah, with the Matas. Actually, I have had honor to talk with the official government representative of agriculture of the US at the global OECD forum, and we've talked. They are very, very more steps in front of us for now, but the way they're implementing technology or the way they're approaching to the technology in agri-food sector, it's quite different from EU.
But so if the US gets 9, for example, we in Europe get what, 4?
No, I wouldn't say that way. Okay, let's say
you just have to give me the figure and we will be done with this.
let's do US 8 and then let's say, well, maybe EU 6.
Okay, good. That was it. You mentioned consumers, and that was really good because there is a very good question. Aren't we looking too much to agriculture when talking about sustainability? What about the role of consumers? If we move to a more plant-based diet, we can achieve huge reductions in greenhouse gases. Maria-Lise.
Yes, we could indeed. But the thing, I mean, the answer is very, very clear. But it is not the only answer, and it's not the only solution. We know that obviously, I mean, we all need to maybe balance out a little bit our diet overall to go certainly more plant-based, but it does not mean that suddenly everyone should, for example, turn into vegans, and we should stop, for example, animal breeding. We shouldn't, because it would have actually very dramatic also consequences on the biodiversity and on the environment as such. Even though we look at the animal breeding as well with the eye that, okay, how can we do it better? How can we actually make better quality? And also at the same time with the focus on sustainability and environment. So there are also solutions there. So it doesn't mean that there's nothing there and everything is on the plant. But yes, indeed, we would and we will have to basically shift our diets. I think that is also from the health question, but it does not mean that indeed it is the only solution and we go from 0 to 100, or that the solution is going to be there. It's not. And let's make it very clear, it's not. But it is part of the solution, and this has to be then looked at.
There is a sub-question to the regulatory framework question that I asked before, and I think I'm going to direct this either to Mr. Vashchaga or our online representative from the European Commission. There are technologies and products developed like biopesticides in Europe, but the regulatory framework lags behind and is very slow in the EU. Registration takes almost 10 years. How is the EU going to speed up the process?
I think it's a very pertinent question, which goes not only in this particular situation, but to any innovation, basically. And it's about regulatory burden, and it's about bureaucratic burden. And what I can assure everyone is that this is going to become European Commission's priority #1 in the next 5 years and in the next Commission term. We have already had a number of initiatives during the last Commission term where we have been in particular targeting the energy sector and helping the energy sector to get the approvals for the new renewable energy projects faster, trying to innovate with the regulatory approach, for example, even setting the deadlines. How long is the longest time by which the approval has to come, or at least the answer has to come. I think now we will be innovating with various approaches also in other sectors. Well, energy was because there was all these, high energy prices. So it was the highest priority. But that's not the only one. So also in other instances, it's going to be a big priority. So I hope that in a few years we will be able to say that now we are becoming faster. I can't say by how much. This is a very specific example, but the most important that we would be getting rid of the bureaucracies and making ourselves faster. Not the new regulation, but actually more effective implementation of the regulation that we have.
Mr. Holzleitner, would you have anything to add to this question?
Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in biopesticides, so there's not much I can add there.
Okay, let's take 2 more, and I think that will be it, unless we have some more time. But there is quite a general question again about farmers when we spoke about not engaging them well enough. How to engage farmers with the transition that is required? Do financial forms of support, are they enough to move minds? Anyone on farmers?
Well, if I just may add, I think it is very important to be indeed inclusive and have this exchange and conversation, and also understanding that, where are we heading, where we are going. As said, in the roundtable that we organized with the farmers around this protein diversification, and we could very well see that, there's need also to understand it more as a whole and farmers as a part of that system, not like just one element that kind of like is there in the beginning of the food producing area, but it has impact on the whole value chain. And and then also maybe one thing there which is important, it's very good that if we are able to indeed reduce some burden of the regulatory aspect, it goes also in a way of when we talk about novel foods. But at the same time, we cannot mend the things with the old tools. I mean, we really need to see that, okay, what can we do certainly differently? Where do we need actually really change? Maybe maybe we don't have to change CAP as a whole, but we need to look at it in a different ways. There's a lot of questions coming also from the farmer side. That is that, we don't just want to have one way of subsidy and being kind of like covered through the CAP. We are much more interested as well other ways of doing business and actually being part of that element, not like only just a very early producer side, but yes, how does that impact the whole value chain as a whole? And I think this is really something that it's complicated, it's complex. For sure, it is complex because we are so used to having this system that has been, farmers are producing, and then the industry is then producing the goods, and then there are consumers. But actually, there's much more of a link and a line that should be built between these different actors in the whole value chain. And I think that through that one, we will get actually what we will get, at least get closer to what we are achieving and what we want to achieve.
Thank you. I think I'm going to direct another question to Mr. Janulevicius, even though you're not directly, as you have mentioned yourself several times, from the agri-food sector, but this can be a good one. In Lithuania, we export a lot of crops, and the plant-based alternatives are mostly imported. How can we encourage our businesses to innovate and produce alternative proteins locally more?
I think the most important, of course, what I mentioned before, at that moment, it's access to capital. Lithuania really has, unfortunately, one of the weakest access to capital in the whole European Union. We have only one of our neighbor Latvians. They have the weaker access to capital than we. That's mean I think this is a general issue. And the next things, I think it would be to reduce some bureaucracy as well, what Mr. Vashaga says, in some purposes. Because to industrialize the food industry, we need really right energy prices, which is as well creating now the issues. And I think with these two components, access to the capital for investments and innovations, and the second is energy prices, could really good the huge boost of our agriculture sector, because we still have a lot of potential. We are producing from the GDP around between 8 and 11% of the total GDP. It's producing the agriculture sector, but we have the good examples. For example, Denmark, which goes up till 17% in total value. I think we are not weaker than some our neighbors. We need to follow them, and it's a lot of issues. But mainly, I think access to the capital to produce the biodiesel, to produce low carbon fuel as well, biogas. It's as the first things, and of course localize as a vertical chain, and internal. It would create much more bigger possibilities for us in general in the future.
Okay. One last question, because this is a really good one. It is not, again, necessarily applicable just to agri-food, but since we have the sort of Nordic Eastern dynamic here in this panel, Lithuanian surveys show that 70% of people do not trust one another. How would you suggest addressing this deep-rooted issue? I mean, the focus is also on collaboration, and I mean, as far as I understand it, we're not collaborating well enough, which means that we lag behind in terms of innovation. So everything is related, just as the bad education system, as you can mention in every sort of discussion. But basically, what lessons could be applied to foster trust in Lithuania? And I think the comparison is wanted with the Nordics and with with Finland, for example.
Well, I don't know the maybe medicine for that one exactly, but I think overall the trust obviously is maybe a little bit what I said even in the beginning, that more inclusive and more we are breaking down the silos. Now I'm talking more broadly on the society, whether it is related to agri-food or other areas, and there's like a maybe exchange that is rather open and transparent. That certainly is going to help to build the trust. By the way, at AgriFood we made also a study some years ago on the Consumer Observatory, and it appears that consumers actually, for consumers, so in a way we all, we have actually more trust on farmers than actually food producers. But this is, I think, a rather known element, really. But then when it comes within the country, I think that it really is about the kind of breaking down silos, having those exchange and conversations around innovation happening, in rather open way, and also making those targets and objectives that what do you want to achieve, and then communicating it, because if for example, often in the agri-food sector it is in the hands of at least 3 ministries. So there's Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Health, and Minister of Economics. And so what often happens is that in the member states, not only Lithuania, I can tell you it is happening also in other countries, there's not like common strategies or common roadmaps. Where do you want to go? Now, these kind of a common roadmaps would certainly also have a positive impact on the trust, because then everyone knows where we are going, and it's not only like lobbying for your specific ministries or areas of a benefit in a way. So maybe that will help.
Yeah, I will just stop here, and I will thank everybody for these really fundamental questions, and I will encourage everybody to continue basically writing them. But at this point, we will just stop. We will have many more discussions, many more angles, and many more examples and good practices that we will gather throughout the lovely, full of content day. And at this point, let's just all thank all of the speakers: Maria Lisa Maurice, Kristina Šermukšnytė-Lešūnienė, Marius Vaščega, Vidmantas Janulevičius, and Christian Holzleitner, who is with us. And we will give you a big round of applause and let you go.